Hello, everyone. I am Michael Ruger. I am the managing partner of Greenbush Financial Group. And the topic we're going to be talking about today is the complex mess that has been created within the Simple IRA world, more specifically about the Simple IRA employee contribution limit. So it used to be very easy in Simple IRA world to explain to an employee how much they could contribute to the plan. The maximums were either if you're under the age of 50, there was a regular deferral limit. If you were 50 or older, there was a catch-up contribution limit. Now, while that is true going into 2025 and years going forward, there's all these additional employee contributions that are now coming in the mix. If you're age 60 to 63, there's this additional 60 to 63 catch-up contribution. If you're employed by an employer that has less than 25 employees, there's this special additional 10% of the regular contribution limit to all employees. And then if you're an employer that has 26 to 100 employees, they may allow you to do that additional 10% contribution, but only if they enhance their employer match or not elective contribution. It's crazy. So to help sort through all this, I'm going to go layer by layer today and explain how the employee contribution limits are going to work for years 2025 and years going forward. Let's start with the basic contribution limits for 2025. So there's the regular, anyone who's under the age of 50. In 2025, you're limited to $16,500 in employee contributions. If you're 50 or older, you get that additional catch-up of $3,500. That's relatively unchanged from past years. But one of the things that's new, and it was new as of last year, was employees actually had the ability in a Simple IRA to contribute either pre-tax deferrals or Roth deferrals. That was new for Secure Act 2.0. However, because there's all these questions about how do you keep track of all these Roth deferrals within the Simple IRA platform to date, as I say here at the beginning of 2025, I still am not aware of any Simple IRA platforms that are actually allowing employees to make Roth deferrals, but we're hoping in 2025 that they're able to catch up with the tax laws and begin to allow employees to elect between pre-tax deferrals and Roth deferrals. The brand new catch-up contribution for Simple IRA plans that's going to be allowed for the first time in 2025 is this age 60 to age 63 additional catch-up contribution. So as I mentioned, you have the 50 plus catch-up contribution, which is a $3,500 in 2025. But in addition to that, if you are going to turn age 60 to 63 at some point in 2025 and years going forward, there's an additional catch-up contribution that you can make to these Simple IRA plans that are essentially equal to 50% of the regular catch-up contribution amount. So for 2025, since the catch-up contribution is $3,500, an additional 50% would be $1,750 on top of that amount. Let's walk through an example. So if you are 61 and you are covered by one of these Simple IRA plans in 2025, your max contribution is going to be your regular deferral limit of $16,500. You're going to get your regular age 50 catch-up contribution of $3,500. Then you're going to be allowed to contribute this new age 60 to 63 catch-up, which is $1,750 for a grand total of $21,750 in 2025. The way they assess the ages for this special 60 to 63 catch-up is, and the year that you turn age 64 is when you actually revert back to the old contribution limit. So for a while, you're able to contribute that extra $1,750, but then in the year you turn 64, you would revert back to that regular catch-up amount of, in 2025, $3,500. I wish the complexity stopped there, but a more complex item that was introduced to Simple IRA plans in 2024 that will also be there for 2025 is this additional 10% employee contribution that is available to all employees regardless of age. So you essentially have to take the regular deferral limit and increase that by another 10%. But whether or not employees have this automatically available or not depends on the size of the employer. Now, as I just mentioned, this rule became in effect in 2024, but will carry forward into 2025, which says if the employer has less than 26 employees that have received at least $5,000 in compensation in the previous calendar year, they automatically had to allow this additional 10% contribution on top of the regular limit for all employees regardless of age. So for example, if a company had, let's say, 5 employees in 2024 and they sponsored a Simple IRA plan, the employee deferral limit wasn't $16,000 in 2024. It was actually $16,000 plus 10%, which would get employees up to $17,600 for their max. Now, there are additional complexities to this 10% rule. Not only is it a 10% additional on the regular deferral amount, but it's also additional 10% on the catch-up contribution amount. That's not the 60 to 63 catch-up, just the regular catch-up. But here's the issue. So the way the regs were written is the additional 10% is based on the 2024 deferral limits, which means we have new deferral limits for 2025, but the way it reads, it says the additional 10% will always be based on the 2024 limit. So what that means is in 2025, if the regular deferral limit is $16,500, this additional 10% is in $16,500 plus 10% on top of that. They look back at 2024, say, well, the limit there was $16,000. 10% of that was an additional $1,600, so $17,600. So for 2025, it's the higher of the regular deferral limit of $16,500 or that special 10% additional, which is still $17,600 because they're doing that additional 10% based on the 2024 rules. I know with all these numbers and different limits, the head's probably spinning right now, but I'll walk you through real quick for 2025 what the deferral limits are for an employer that has that under 26 employees. So the regular deferral limit is $16,500, but since they have under 26 employees, those employees would be eligible for the additional 10% amount, which is $17,600 would be the new deferral limit for all employees. If an employee is age 50 or above, normally they would have been limited to $3,500 catch-up, because also that catch-up gets a 10% boost based on the 2024 amount. The actual catch-up limit in 2025 is $3,850. I'll show you a quick chart, old rules versus new rules. So we're talking about under the old rules. If we were ignoring all this extra 10% stuff, the way it would have worked is an employee under the age of 50, the regular $16,500 for the regular deferral amount, and the additional $3,500 for the catch-up contribution for a total of $20,000. But under the new rules for 2025, if the employer has less than 26 employees, the new deferral limit is $17,600 for all employees. And then if they're over 50, they get the additional catch-up of $3,850 for a total of $21,450. And an added note, this is just for the employees, the catch-up for employees 50 to 59 and then 64 and above, because now we have that special catch-up limit for the 60 to 63 employees. For those employees aged 60 to 63 that are eligible for that special catch-up, that catch-up contribution is always based on 50% of whatever the catch-up limit is for that year. So $3,500 in 2025, that boosted up to $5,250 in 2025 for these 60 to 63s. And then you add that on top of the special deferral enhanced amount for employers under 26 employees. So it's that $17,600 plus the $5,250 catch-up for a total of $22,850 for those employees aged 60 to 63 in 2025. Now, this 10% additional contribution is available to all employees with employers under those 26 employees. However, for employers that have that 26 to 100 employees, they could potentially still be eligible for this 10% additional employee contribution, but in order to do that, the company has to voluntarily decide to increase their employer contribution. Because in Simple IRA world, the max contribution is usually a 3% match or a 2% non-elective. If there's an employer with 26 to 100 employees, if they offer an enhanced match or an enhanced non-elective, so if they boost their match to 4% of pay dollar for dollar, or if they boost their non-elective from 2 to 3%, then they open up their employees the ability to contribute this additional 10% on top of the regular deferral amount, but only if they offer that increased employer contribution. Again, to help simplify the limits so employees and employers understand the limits, I'm going to give you a simple chart that shows all employers with under 25 employees, here are the 2025 limits, and for the employers 26 plus employees, here are the limits for 2025. So let's start with the employers under 26 employees. The regular employee deferral limit for 2025 will be $17,600. For employees ages 50 to 59, the limit will be $21,450. For employees age 60 to 63, the limit will be $22,850. And then employees age 64 plus, it'll be $21,450. Now moving over to those employers that have 26 or more employees in that previous calendar year making over $5,000 in comp, assuming they do not offer the new enhanced match or non-elective, so their employees do not get that 10% additional contribution, the limit for them would be employee deferral limits of $16,500. Employees age 50 to 59, $20,000. Employees age 60 to 63, $21,750, and then employees age 64 plus revert back to $20,000 for their max employee contribution. However, if that employer with 26 or more employees elects to offer the enhanced match or enhanced non-elective, those employees would now have the same deferral limits as the under 25 employers have with that additional 10% in the mix. Now, I'll pause for a sec because everything we've talked about up to this point has everything to do with employee deferrals. There is something in Secure Act 2.0 that opened up an additional employer contribution to Simple IRA plans that I'm going to talk about now. Prior to Secure Act 2.0, the only two types of employer contributions that could be made were the 3% match or the 2% non-elective. But now with Secure Act 2.0, companies have the option to make an additional non-elective contribution, which is over and above the match, over and above, let's say, the 2% non-elective that's already being made. They can make it up to the lesser of 10% of the employee's compensation or $5,000. That's the cap, and it has to be uniform across the board for all eligible employees. I hope this information was helpful. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me at greenbushfinancial.com. Thank you.